Hey, welcome back to Rusted Horsepower. It's been a while, huh? What I'm working on today is my wife's 2012 Traverse. Not the typical thing that I usually put on this channel, but stuff breaks down and you got to get it going. Let me show you what we're dealing with. So this is what we got. This is a situation you're going to see whenever you're going to the hot, cold weather, changing months where one day it's hot, one day it's cool, and mornings are cool, evenings are cool, and the middle of the day is normal. A lot of temperature changes are going to cause something like this. So what happened there is it went from a slow crank to an eventual no crank. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to jump start it and I'm going to check it for codes. I'm looking for throttle body codes or any kind of transmission codes, because the last time I drove it, it had no throttle response and the transmission was shifting really erratic. So I'm hoping there's no other codes there that might be talking about an underlying problem. But at the same time, I know that low voltage can cause false codes. So we're going to go ahead and scan it first before we do anything else. So on a Traverse, you actually have jump start points. You don't really have a battery on the outside of the engine area where you can jump start from. So you have this ground stud here that goes straight to a body ground, and then you have on your fuse block you have this positive stud. So that's the only place to jump start here. If you look down at the jump starter, it has a digital readout for voltage. As you can tell, the voltage right now is 10 volts, just a little over 10 volts. And once we flip the switch, we're actually feeding it power from the jumper. 11.5. That should be enough to jump start the vehicle. Of course, it's not the typical 12 volts, but it still has plenty of amps behind it. So the first thing we do is we switch off the jumper. That prevents the alternator from overcharging the jumper and damaging it. You can tell the alternator is now charging 4.8 volts. It's trying to catch up with that battery. So now we'll just go ahead and disconnect the jumper. So like I said, there's our check engine light. The computer modules are not happy with low voltage, so we'll just go ahead and scan it and see what's going on. Some of the stuff I'm going to be using, first off, I got my tablet here. I got my little blue driver scanner. Old school load tester for the battery. Got my voltmeter, my fluke voltmeter, check for any parasitic draw. I got some sockets, extensions, and my quarter impact. First off, let's start with the blue driver. We got our blue driver here. We got our OBD2 port under here, right under the steering column. Go ahead and hook up to it. That's the correct mileage, 44,646. And we have an internal control, fuel control performance, internal control module EEPROM error. That's usually like memory. O2 sensor, bank 1, sensor 1, sensor 2, bank 2, sensor 2, bank 1, sensor 1. All these codes basically have to do with ignition sources. I believe these were due to low voltage, so I'm just going to go ahead and clear them all off. So the permanent codes stay there. They don't mean anything. The pending and confirmed codes are gone. I'll go ahead and exit out now. So as you can see, the check engine light is gone. Now I'll go ahead and disconnect the blue driver. So the reason I disconnected the blue driver before I mess with the battery is because anytime you're messing with the battery, messing with the connections, the cables, you want to disconnect any kind of scan tools. Unless you're checking for parasitic draw, you want to take that equipment out of the circuit while you're messing with the battery, because a simple arc on the battery cables can damage your stuff. So GM decided to put the battery on the Traverse in the mid body, right at the feet of the second row. Whether they did that to keep the battery out of the elements, or they just ran out of room in the engine compartment, who knows, but that's where the battery's at. We unlock these small little locks for the floor mat. Get the floor mat out of the way. So now we need a T20, 10 millimeter, 13 millimeter, an extension, and my quarter impact. First thing, the T20 Torx. This panel comes off. We have a 10 millimeter. The battery clamps. Take out the positive. Take out the negative. We're just going to go ahead and test it with the battery tester. So we've got the positive clamp of the battery tester hooked up to the positive terminal, negative to the negative terminal. This is like an old school load tester. Of course, it shows good before we load it. We load it and it falls on its face. That's typical. There's a lot of times you charge a battery, whether at the parts store or with your own charger, and you check it and everything checks good because you haven't loaded it yet. Once you put a load on it, once you put it in the vehicle, you try to crank it and it falls on its face. That's most likely a bad battery. So we're going to go ahead and swap it out with a battery that we got, a known good battery, and then I'll go ahead and check for parasitic draw, make sure nothing is actually draining it. Just remove the clamps. .13 millimeter, magnetic, always helps. So let me see if I can get this battery out. This panel is being stubborn, didn't want to get out of the way. So there's the old battery. Something that's very important here, anytime you have a battery that's trunk mounted or mounted anywhere in the engine, in the passenger compartment, you have a vent hose. This one actually popped off as I was taking it out. But you have a vent hose on one side, and a lot of times you'll have a plug on the other side. So that vent hose is important because when the battery is charging and discharging, it's releasing hydrogen gas, it's releasing poison. You want that to go outside the vehicle. You don't want it to be lingering inside when you and your passengers are in there. The plug is also important because if one side has the vent hose and the other side is unplugged, you're still releasing some of those poisonous gases into the engine compartment. I've seen a lot of batteries replaced by aftermarket stores. I won't name any, but they either don't put the vent hose at all, or they don't put plugs in it, they just have it open, or they put the wrong battery that actually just vents as if it was in the engine compartment. That's wrong, and it could be deadly. So this is the actual known good battery I was talking about. A couple of friends of ours actually gave us this battery. They have a vehicle they're no longer going to use. Very similar to our Traverse. And it's an aftermarket battery. Not sure where it came from. But if you look closely, just like I was telling you, there's your vent, wide open. Vent on the other side, wide open. You can actually reach in there and grab the plug with your nail. If you got nothing else, you can use a pair of pliers. You can use a pocket screwdriver. Pocket screwdriver works wonders. Just transfer the plug over. A little stiff because nothing's ever been in there. Tap it in place. On the other side, that's where we're going to put the actual vent. Just transfer the vent. Usually this piece would stay with the vehicle. We're ready to pop the battery in. So this is what the vent looks like in the battery tray. It's a vent hose. Has a little grommet, hooks up to the body. That way the battery can actually breathe outside to the ambient air. You just got to be sure to hook up your hose. Hook up our positive cable. This negative connector. I'd secure the hole down. $10mm for the clamp. I'm going to leave the negative disconnected for the moment. So that's where we're going to hook up the meter. We're going to hook up our fluke meter in line to make sure we have no parasitic draw, nothing draining the battery. So we have our fluke meter here. If you look closely, right here we have amps, MA, milliamps, and amps. Turn it all the way to amps. And we have to put our lead over to the amp symbol. Doesn't matter which one it is, one lead goes to the cable you're going to be checking. It's usually preferable to check through the negative side. The other lead goes to the battery negative terminal. You can either hold it there or prop it there. It doesn't matter as long as it's making contact. Again, pocket screwdriver. Got to jam the door, make it think it's closed. So now we can sit here and watch the meter scale down. This is an auto ranging meter, so even though it's set to amps, it is reading below the decimal. The first digit is actual amps. Below that, the other three below are below the decimal, are also called milliamps. You can see it's finding its lowest setting, just keeps dropping. Sometimes it can take up to 45 minutes for it to completely power down. And that's probably going to be the lowest setting there. Looking at about 20 to 9 milliamps. That's actually pretty good. We hit min-max and it's technically recording any readings from here on out. I'm just going to assume that that's the lowest point. If I was to walk away, go to lunch, do something, it's going to record the maximum setting, the lowest setting, and the average. To reset it, you just flip the meter on, off. That's actually a pretty low reading for a modern vehicle with all kinds of computer systems and keep alive memories. And when it comes to parasitic draw, the lower the better. As long as you still have full contact, the lower the better. One thing that I like to do, just in case I don't have good contact or something's not connected right, so if that light turned on, that means we did have good contact between the leads and the meter and the battery. So I know everything's working there. At this point, I'll go ahead and remove the meter, hook up my cables back up, and see how the vehicle does. Then we pick up our tools. And don't forget to undo your door jamb. So there you have it. That was a pretty straightforward repair. Fixed my wife's car. Didn't have to spend no money paying anybody to do it. For the next few days, I'll probably keep an eye on it when I drive it. Make sure the shifting and everything else is doing fine. No warning lights are popping up. My instinct is that it's going to be fine. But one interesting thing that I noticed on the battery, that gray label, that means that's a factory battery. That's the original battery. I should know. I've never put one in it. I'm the only one that's ever worked on our cars. But maybe GM was onto something, keeping the battery more insulated in the passenger compartment. Anyways, I hope to have more videos out pretty soon. Hopefully more in-depth stuff than just messing with my wife's Traverse. I got to get the Chevelle in here somehow. I got some more stuff to do to the Chevelle, repairs, and see if I can make more videos. But thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe.